same battles over and over again.
Right.
Layla, jump into this microphone. When we talked about in the Muslim South Asian community, we was getting them out. Remember we did the bus, going to different mosques, loading them up for early voting. Now, do we move our strategy now, Layla, to vote by mail? Like to me now, we got to do vote by mail before they start tampering with that.
You know, first and foremost, for any minority community, be it or not a minority community, if there's a negativity or, you know, a strain connected to voting, people are not going to want to vote. People don't wake up on a daily basis and say, I want to do my civic duty, I want to vote, you know?
That's
when
right.
in the media they hear all this negativity, there's going, oh, I don't want to go through changing my address. And one thing that I want to note is that these laws directly affect college students. I'm a university student, and with my lease situation, I change where I live every 6 months.
Right.
But of course, I know that I have to go change it in time. But the majority of university students don't even know these things. At the University of South Florida, during the municipal elections, we had a voting place at the Marshall Student Center. 7 people voted.
You're talking about a shameful
7
God.
people voted. And I just want to reiterate to people that no matter what's being discussed today, you can still vote. You still have your right to vote. You know?
All right, Layla laid it out there. Hakeem, the Dream, follow that up, Dream. Come on, jump in there.
Well, again, I want the listening audience to really take this matter serious, because we as African American traditionally, we had a very difficult time. So voter suppression is nothing new. It's just history repeating itself. But we defeated it before, and we're going to defeat it again. But it's going to take effort like it took before. Hopefully no lives will be lost like we did before, but a lot of energy going to have to be there. Because when you fail to do so, then you're giving someone the opportunity to govern your life and run your life and tell you how your life should be. And I'm saying is that this election is going to be the most important election, I think, in our generation. And so we cannot let those who want to stop growth and progress and help people to feel that they have an obligation to fulfill their right to go out and vote, take that right away from them.
Right. Let's move now. I want to go to you, Mr. Watson. Let's talk about now all these nonprofits, including Emerge and NAACP, all these Democrat Black Caucus who do voter registration. What they have essentially did now is discourage people from registering people to vote. They saying now it went from you can turn the paperwork in 10 days. Now you got 48 hours, essentially a couple of days, 4 days to turn the paperwork in, and gonna be fined tremendously if the paperwork is not turned in in time. How bad is that gonna affect new voters, bringing them into the process, Terry?
Well, it makes all the difference in the world. What it does is it penalizes the person who is a volunteer who is going out there to help register new voters. Because the penalty goes at $50 per voter goes to the person who is doing the registration, when they may not even have control of whether or not that form gets in within the 48 hours. You know, if there is one thing, Jarvis, that I think we have to look at, I would like to get across with this whole issue, is when we have a party that has to try to stop people from voting in order to get their people elected, then something is wrong with that party.
And it sounds like something is wrong with the core of our so-called democracy as well. Let me go now to Layla. You hit on it earlier, Layla. Address change. People who rent, college students, people in the urban core that move a lot, that don't have no stability. I know for a fact that at C. Blythe Andrews Library, how many people that we got to vote and they didn't have the correct address, they had to just show a photo ID that voted that, I mean, I consider literally hundreds of votes would have been lost in this last municipal election if this law was in effect. And when you got an election that one candidate make the runoff by 384 votes, that's huge. This amount to voter suppression, it amount to creating a regime and dictatorship. How are we going to deal with this now in terms of educating people, Layla, to changing the address? Now this is more work we have to do.
Like Ella said, we have to completely focus our efforts now and time and money, and as a nonprofit organization, it's really difficult to be wasting so much time and effort on educating people how to even register to vote.
Yes.
And like you said, Hakeem, earlier in the show, if they don't register beforehand, before they go, they have to submit their vote as a provisional ballot, so it might not even get counted in the election, which is completely huge, you know? And a lot of people don't understand in municipal elections, local elections, state elections, every vote does really count.
It really does, and you're hitting it on the head. I'm telling you, I am so excited about the work that Emerge is doing and work you're doing as a field coordinator. You're very sharp, you hit, and you brought up that about provisional ballot don't count, and I wanted to bring that out, and you brought it, and I'm glad you covered for me. Ella, jump in on this, Ella. I want to talk about something now. You remember Kendrick Meek, right?
Correct.
And he had the classroom size amendment.
Yes.
And citizen initiative for petition. They don't change that now. They're saying now those petitions used to last 2 years. You got 2 years to get your signature. Now they increase it. It used to be 4 years. I'm sorry.
Correct.
And now they decrease it to 2 years.
Correct.
How bad is that? Having a constitutional amendment look like that's gonna be out the window too. That we don't have no way to add no constitutional amendments to the Constitution no more.
That is essentially what they're doing. They're blocking us being able to make changes to our Constitution. And it is about the effect on the minorities in the state of Florida. Things that need to be changed for the betterment are now being changed to discourage minorities from going out to vote, as Layla had stated earlier. What we do need to make sure that we do in all of this process is the nonprofits. We need to make sure that they are completely educated on the process, because they have to register now in order to be a person that goes out to register.
And I agree with you on that, Ella. I think what we need to do is we need these nonprofits to get together and do some kind of workshop on the new laws so that we can be ahead of the game. We got to hit the ground running.
Right.
Because this thing is going to hit now, right now, Terry. This thing is going to happen. It's affected. And I'm going to get to some other things we're going to talk about, because there's 4 supervisors elections that's refused to implement this law based on the Department of Justice. Let me go to Hakeem the Dream, and we're going to go back around the horn. Hakeem the Dream!
Well, basically, that was what I wanted to say about the Justice Department looking into it now and see whether this is constitutional right. But now, since you mentioned that, I'd like to go to the next level, is that the primary dates going to change.
For the presidential
election. So now with all of these changes, believe me, if they implement these changes, they're not for the betterment of getting Obama elected president. So now how much of effect it would have on our turnout? Well, what I urgently, our listening audience, to please consider putting more emphasis and more energy and talking it up. That way, when the time comes, regardless of what they try to do, we will be in training that this is the big event, and we'll come out and we'll slay this big monster that's out there.
Right. All right. Let's go now to Terry.
I think it's important. I just heard both of you say the word we. Earlier we were saying they. We can blame Rick Scott all day long, but here's the reality. We knew what we were getting when Rick Scott ran and when he was elected. We knew that. The problem we have right now is many people who could have voted did not vote in 2010. If Alex Sink, the Democrat, had won the election, this bill would have been vetoed. And she lost by 1% of the vote.
Okay, but I'm going to challenge you, Terry. Jump back in the microphone. Don't go nowhere. I'm going to challenge you on that. First of all, let's keep it real and make it happen. She ran the worst campaign a candidate could run. She alienated certain minority groups in this country. She was not a good candidate. The Democrats have a responsibility, sir, to bring good candidates, to produce good candidates. And that's why we need Democrat Black Caucus grooming good candidates to run, having good political consultants, good handlers that could tell who was giving her advice. Who was giving her advice? So we know what Rick Scott was, man, pleaded the fifth 75 times. We know all that. But at the same time, what was the alternative when we had a candidate that refused to meet with the NAACP in South Florida, almost refused to come to Tampa? The people in Tampa, I know from firsthand, almost begging to come to Belmont Heights on 22nd and Martin Luther King. Come on, man, this is real. So let's put this, it's enough blame to spread around, my friend. And it's our responsibility as leaders, when we want to invite people to the process, let's give them, we finally get them to vote. Let's give them something good to vote for. Let's move on to this. I'm going to come back to you. Let's move on to this one now. I want to ask you later. Come on, jump in. I got a question I want to ask you, but go ahead, make your comment.
I was just going to say that, Senator Bill Nelson was approached by the majority of the supervisors of elections within the counties of the state of Florida, and they together sent a letter to the Justice Department saying, you know, what is going on with these laws? What's going on here? Because it doesn't make sense. If the supervisors of elections, who know firsthand what's going on in their counties when it comes to elections, when it comes to the polls, if they're saying that there's no fraud, that there's no corruption, which, you know, it's increasingly gone down since 2000. Statistically,
right. Since 2000.
Since 2000,
I can't
it's
talk about that this
increasingly
morning.
gone
Yeah.
down. And then now we'll see. I mean, I don't know.
It's a
if the
plan to
Justice
defeat
Department
Obama and the Democrats and the progressive in 2012. Let me go now to, since you jumped in and I go right to L on it. In accordance to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Justice Department had to have a pre-clearance for these election laws. And if you want to ever see the Voters' Rights Act being violated, it's here. It's 4 counties, Collier County, Hillsborough, a couple more counties that have refused to implement these election laws so they get a DOC clearance. My question to you, Ella, should we be putting pressure on the Department of Justice to not give a pre-clearance for this? Because this amount to, we already said it, voter depression.
Oh, well, certainly. Just to answer that question in one word, yes,
Okay.
we should. We actually, I believe it's 5 counties that have indicated, based on a previous lawsuit, that they will not enact this law currently until they get pre-clearance. And Hillsborough County is one of those counties. So we are currently under the old law, and we will continue to be under the old law until the Department of Justice gives their pre-clearance. Now, in that aspect, we are at this point attempting to get some information to find out where in the Department of Justice do we need to make those phone calls? Do we need to have those letters written to put that pressure on that department? We are trying to get that information.
You my community organizer. That's what we need to do, Ella. You my community organizer. I'm serious. We need to get that and get it to me, Ella. So honest opinion would be that vehicle, that voice to get the word out. I think that we got to start agitating. We got to start doing what we used to do, making phone calls, emailing, texting, Facebook, and whatever we need to do. Let me just let the people, if you just tune into the show, this is Honest Opinion. Keeping it real, making it happen on AM 1150, 96.1 FM at WTMP.com, streaming live. We're talking about voter suppression or defeat Obama in 2012. We have in the studio with us, we have Ella Coffey, a local political consultant. We also have Layla Abdul Aziz, the field coordinator for Emerge USA, a grassroots political organization among the Muslim community. And we have Terry Watson. He's the CEO of My Health Recovery and a former chair of the Tampa O-Train team, the organization that helped get President Obama elected during the primary. We have, if you want to have any questions or want to get in on this conversation, 813-251-9867, 813-251-WTMP. This is a hot subject and it's very important. This subject was weighing heavy on my heart. I start feeling like America's turning into a dictatorship. And I've been here all my life, and you know, I'm American. Give me 2 American flags, but I felt bad this morning talking about this, that we got to be fighting for a democracy that we should already have. This don't make sense to me. And we the people got to make a change. This is a serious matter. I know there are other issues out there with the county attorney, the man on 40th Street, and all those issues are important, but this go to the core cause. All these laws that's being enacted now is from one bad election. If you don't know why you should vote, what the word is?
Rick Scott.
All right, Rick Scott.
Jarvis, one thing
Let me read this. Before I do that, hold your point, Ella. I got to get this in. This came out today in St. Pete Times. The 2 groups sue over the voting law. They said the bill is a partisan attempt to discourage voters. The American Civil Liberties Union and Project Vote have filed a lawsuit in Miami-Dade County against the shortening of the early vote. One of our local senators, Athenia Joyner, she said this, I quote, "The bill passed by the legislators, Republican legislators, is an example of rank partisan agenda that disproportionately hurts a minority. It is un-American, and it makes and put a burden on people to vote. Too many people died and fought for the right to vote. This is an abomination, and it's unconscionable." And the man who sponsored the bill, listen to his response. Now you think you're in Tunisia, Yemen. But the sponsor of the legislation, Dennis Bagley, said, a Republican from Ocala, said the state needs to ensure there's no voter fraud. Shame for God. Hakeem, the dream.